I'm Michele Cushatt, and this is the What the Speak podcast.
What the Speak, episode 38. Greetings, Earthlings.
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
Struggling with feeling comfortable in front of an audience when you present? Or maybe you're confident, but you have difficulty stumbling over filler words like and ah. Well, you can start kicking ass today by signing up for our weekly VIP updates. As a bonus, you'll also receive 11 free tips that will uncover 6 psychological secrets to public speaking, plus 5 tips on how to stop using filler words. Go to whatthespeak.com/VIP. Michele Cushatt, are you ready to answer the question, what the speak?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right. So, Michele, you are an experienced keynote speaker and an MC. You provide coaching and training to others interested in becoming better communicators, and you have your first book coming out around 2015.
Correct.
But let's hear it directly from you. I would love to have you share with us who you are and exactly what it is that you do.
All right. Well, what I do in one single sentence is that I discover, craft, and develop powerful content, either my own or help other people develop theirs. And that's as simple as I can put it. Now, powerful content can be spoken or written, either one. But my goal is to try to help people find that content or do it myself, craft it in the best, most effective possible way, and then deliver it with as much impact as I can.
Brilliant. Well, Michele, I know that you play a lot of different roles when it comes to, public speaking, which we'll dive into a little bit. But when you get in front of an audience and you're giving a presentation, what are some of the topics that you usually share with your audiences?
Well, I speak on a wide variety. I'm one of those kind of anomalies. So I have kind of a couple different circles or realms that I speak in and communicate to, kind of a couple different brands, which is kind of unusual. I do everything from writing, speaking related topics. So when I go to a writer's conference or a speaker's conference, I will be presenting on specific how-to presentations on those topics, like the how-to of storytelling, or how to put together a presentation in an hour or less, or, kind of how to craft your stories or how to craft your message in the best possible way. So those kind of how-tos. But I also do just a lot of public speaking on my own and talk about multiple different topics. It could be anything from motherhood or family topics to this next week I'm doing 2 presentations in Texas on overcoming fear and how to kind of identify the lies that fear tells us and then kind of reframe those and tell yourself the truth and have more confidence.
Excellent. So you've got a lot of different things going on with the various aspects to your background, your experiences. Mm-hmm. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, so I have the whole kind of speaking, writing, training world that I spend a lot of time in, but I also have this inspirational world where I do a lot of speaking on faith and on life and family. So it's kind of both of those, and I do them really equally. There's not one that's more dominant than the other.
Okay. Well, let's go back a little bit into the history of kind of your story. And I would love to hear from you. How did you get into speaking? What was that first moment, maybe when you were a kid or a teenager, or maybe it was something during your later years as a young adult that you got into? Can you share with us some of the aspects of your story?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I am the unusual speaker that never wanted to be a speaker. In fact, I was petrified, terrified of being in front of people. I even remember in high school, my high school required public speaking as a course in order to graduate from high school. And I put it off to the very last semester because I couldn't bear the thought of having to communicate in front of a room full of my peers. It just made me, I was physically ill the entire semester. And so I never really thought I would do this. Then fast forward about, 20 years probably. And I kind of got this idea of doing a conference for women. I was a young mom at the time. I was hanging out with a lot of different women who just didn't see their own unique expertise or talents or gifts. And so I had this kind of dream of doing a conference for women where they could kind of discover their unique talents and then use them to lead in their own circle. So I started this conference. Now, I was not one of the speakers, but because I founded the conference, then I had to actually do a little speaking on stage, which, again, I was physically ill doing it. At the end of that conference, 2 of the 3 keynote speakers came up to me afterwards and said, Michele, you really have a knack for this. You need to think about doing it. Of course, after I picked my chin up off the floor, I thought, well, maybe there is something to this. And within about 2 months, I actually attended my first speaking conference, which was the SCORE conference. And that completely changed everything. That's been about 7 years ago now. And so I've been in this public speaking world since then. And now I love it. I can't imagine not doing it, which is such a huge transformation compared to the first half of my life.
So I want to talk about your struggles, some areas that you've kind of been working on improving. But before we do that, would be interested in hearing from you, because obviously I've had several guests on the show that have gone through the SCORE conference training themselves, as well as obviously I've had Michael Hyatt and Ken Davis on the show. But from your perspective, I'm really intrigued to hear from you. What's the difference between what you get through the SCORE conference versus some others who maybe go the path of joining Toastmasters, for example? Can you dive into that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a big difference, and it's not that it's an either or. I think Toastmasters definitely has its place and it has its value. What SCORE does that's so different is we strip you all the way back to the preparation process. So a lot of speaking conferences, they really work more on the delivery, on voice and body language and gestures and illustrations and things like that. And what SCORE does, it strips you all the way back to the very, very beginning of your preparation process, which starts with this question that you have to ask yourself any time you want to speak. What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to accomplish with your audience today? And so in other words, when they get up and leave the room where you're speaking, if it's an auditorium or a classroom, wherever it may be, how do you want them to be different, to believe, act, think differently as a result of hearing you speak? And so SCORE kind of, because it strips away all of the decoration, I guess, and talks about the preparation process, that's what really sets it apart. And actually, that answers your other question about my struggle and how I overcame it. Really, my biggest struggle was a lack of confidence. I was so petrified of being in front of people. And the thought of failing or disappointing my audience was mortifying to me. And so, that's a huge struggle for most people. I mean, public speaking is terrifying. So that's a big, big challenge. How do you overcome that? You can only fake that so far. And what I found is because SCORE focused on preparation, on the message, it took the focus off of me and my nerves and put it on the message and the audience. And so all of a sudden, it didn't become about me impressing them. It became about somebody that's sitting in the room that has a deep, deep need that I might be able to meet. And that became my focus. And the minute that I started focusing on the people in the room and their needs and not myself, confidence came because I wasn't afraid of failing anymore. You can't fail when you want to serve people and take care of them.
So I love that because, this is something that is a recurring theme with so many of the guests that I have on the show, where the idea of making this and rather understanding that this isn't about you. This isn't about you being the center of attention. This is about you serving the audience and being able to provide some type of information or inspiration that is transformational. And when you start to shift your focus that direction, great things can happen.
Absolutely. And that's true in writing and blogging and speaking and doing interviews like this, whatever it may be. The focus has got to be on the needs of the people that you're speaking with. If not, eventually people will discover that you're just full of air. They don't have any interest in that. You have to be committed to meeting needs if you're going to succeed in this business.
Well, Michele, I know, I've seen you up in front of an audience. You're one of those folks that seems like a complete natural. And so to hear your story about the struggle that you had and how you overcame that is awesome. And just digging a little bit deeper, I'm kind of interested in hearing, was it really that simple? Was it you going through that process of the SCORE method and then realizing that, hey, this is about the audience. And as soon as I realized that it became that much easier. Was it almost like flipping a switch, or did it take a little bit of time, a little bit of practice of constantly reminding yourself of that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. In answer to the first part of your question, there was nothing easy about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally having to put myself in an uncomfortable position again and again and again. What SCORE did was just help me reframe my objective, my purpose, and the focus of my attention. So it just decreased the nerves. But let me tell you, I have literally the last 7-8 years, my almost 100% of my work time has been committed to honing this skill of public speaking. It's taken tons of practice, putting myself on stage again and again and again, and tweaking and revising and inviting feedback and getting critiqued and all of that in order to be at a place where I feel a little, I feel more confident now than I did before. But, that's 8 years of dedicated practice and effort in order to get to this place.
So I think that this whole idea and making sure that people understand that there's really no magic pill.
No, there's not.
You've got processes that you have to go through. Rehearsal is absolutely critical, dedicating yourself to improving in this area, but it's really just taking that first step of realizing that you can do this. And that, again, what happens when you do that and you put yourself in that place, allow yourself to be uncomfortable for a while until you get used to it and until you continue to refine those skills, and then great things can happen.
Exactly. I think of it in terms of building a house. So you could build a house without any instructions, and you could do it, and you could put up the house, and you eventually figure it out and get it done. Or you can have a process that's outlined and detailed and build the house. The house is still not going to go up overnight. It's still going to take time. It's still going to take work. It's still going to take effort. But when you have that set of instructions or the process detailed that you know what to follow, it sure makes the process of the practicing and learning and building that much easier, I guess, sort of. It's still work, but it makes it much simpler.
So, Michele, let's talk about your unique perspective, your expert perspective, let's say. And the thing I'm really interested in finding out from you is, as somebody who coaches and trains and teaches others on how to become better communicators, what are some of the things that you've learned through that process that has allowed you to continue on your personal journey? It's one thing to go through it and become a better speaker yourself, but then to help others. What's some of the insights that you've gleaned from that experience?
Oh, coaching is probably one of the most thrilling parts of what I do, just because you get to interact with people in their real story, their real life, and kind of pull out of them what their burning message is and help them to figure out what it is exactly they're trying to say. And anytime you do that, I just think anytime you teach something, you actually learn more in the teaching than you do in not teaching, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I coach different clients and I help them, I'm reminded again and again how this craft of communication, this art of communication, is such a worthy medium and not an easy one. So it's really worth wrestling with, that communication should be wrestled with. It should not be something we're flippant about or we take lightly. It should be something that we value, that we recognize its power, and we aren't afraid to wrestle with and work with. And so as I work with clients and I see them struggling to really figure out what it is they're trying to say, that reminds me again and again that that's what it should look like for me in my process as well.
Yeah, I know that one of my big favorite areas to study and understand is neuroscience. Mm-hmm. And recent studies in the field of neuroscience has uncovered that the person who does the talking is the person who does the learning. Mm-hmm. And so for you to say that, you've learned a lot by being able to teach others, and it's really because you're kind of walking them through that and describing to them, what the method is and the areas that they can continue to improve upon. You yourself are learning. And I think it's really interesting that dichotomy of, being able to open yourself up to that, to continue to help you go to the next level while you're also, being in service to others is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and I would also add on that, I think communication really is collaboration. It's not a solo business. I mean, we think of this, when we're communicators, we think of ourselves as being in business for ourselves, that we're entrepreneurs doing this alone, but it's really not. I mean, true communication is a collaboration. And even if you get on stage as a speaker, a keynote speaker, it's still a collaboration between you and your audience. So your communication has to involve them, and there is back and forth feedback that's happening, even if you're the only person talking. So whether it's in the preparation process, in the evaluation process, or even in the presentation itself, communication is always a collaboration.
Yeah, I like that idea. And it's kind of something similar to what Nancy Duarte and Gar Reynolds teach. They're experts, obviously, in presentation design, but as far as putting together the content for your presentation, they talk a lot about this idea of your role as the person on stage is not the hero of the story. You're the mentor. Mm-hmm. The audience is the hero.
Yes.
And often using the example of Yoda and Luke Skywalker, the audience is Luke Skywalker and you are Yoda in service to that audience, to be able to provide them with insights and inspiration to allow them to then go out and take action on your message.
Yes, exactly. One of my favorite authors and writing mentors is a woman by the name of Marion Roach Smith. She wrote a book called The Memoir Project that is really, it's a book for people that want to write their story. But what I found was so profound about that is she also helps us tell stories and communicate them speaking as well. So I really took a lot of her material and kind of translated it to the speaking world. But one of the things that when I spoke with her on the phone that she told me is that the goal of any story or a book or communication in general is transcendence for the audience. We want to somehow lift them up out of their current scenario and help them see kind of a bigger picture or see their own story from a different perspective. And so very much what you're saying, we're kind of a coach or a mentor on the journey, but they're the hero of their own story. And our unique opportunity or honor or responsibility, whatever you want to call it, is to somehow help shuttle them into that place, to bring them to that place where they can see it more clearly.
Absolutely. So Michele, you're the first guest I've had on this show that specifically plays the role of MC.
Yes.
Not to be confused with the hip hop MC, of course, but the master of ceremonies.
Oh, I have hidden talents you don't know about.
You break out into a little rhyme on stage occasionally?
Who knows? Maybe someday. Maybe I should spare my audiences and stick with what I know.
There you go. So how, what's it like being an MC compared to that keynote role, or if you're leading a workshop or a seminar? What are some of the things that you can tell us about your experiences, kind of overseeing the entire event and stitching together all the different pieces so that it's one cohesive thing? Any insights would love to hear from you.
Oh, I love the role of MC. And there's some people that feel that that's kind of a throwaway role. So they just grab kind of a warm body and stick somebody in that to do the MC role. And I don't believe that at all. I really believe that the MC role is one that helps to set up the success of the event. And that's not like a bragging kind of thing. I just think it's such a critical piece. And I think that those who do events, who really understand the value of the MC and invest in that, will be delighted at the results. Okay, so this is what I think an MC does. I kind of view it as being, if you're going to have a dinner party, I'm the person who opens the front door and invites all the guests into my house and immediately makes them feel at home and welcome. So that first impression when they get there is so key. So I'm typically the first person on the stage at the very beginning of the event, and I want to do everything that I can in those first moments to put them at ease, to make them feel like they just pulled up a chair with a friend and that we're just going to have a great time together, that they feel taken care of and valued and welcomed in every possible way. So that's kind of my first priority right there. But then there's this ongoing responsibility that the MC has throughout an entire program to set up each of the presenters for success, to kind of gauge the temperature of the room, the tone of the room. If, for example, if one's presenter just ended their presentation with a really dramatic or powerful or intense story, the audience can be kind of in a, not necessarily a slump, but kind of in this very intense place. That's kind of a nightmare for the next presenter to step up to. So my goal is to kind of transition from one kind of speaker and then set up the next speaker for success. Sometimes that's with some takeaway for the speaker before, so that way people remember what was communicated and said. Sometimes it's the use of humor or story to just kind of lighten the load and let everybody catch their breath. But it's always programmed. It's not, some of it is ad lib and add in, but it's very intentional and objective driven. It's not just randomly thrown out stuff. I mean, it's really all about the overall objective of the program.
Yeah, for the last couple of years, I've been responsible myself for an annual conference, and one of the roles that I play is of MC, and it was really a great experience to be able to realize that, like you said, you're there to stitch everything together in a very cohesive as well as strategic way, not just to kind of fill the gap or to try and just transition, but it's bigger than that. And to be able to, kind of recap what that last speaker's message was, provide just a little bit of insight, from your own perspective, and then, set up the next speaker to then make that transition is key. And it's been, a great learning experience for myself, and also the things that you've shared, I think would be very beneficial to those that might find themselves in that role. Maybe they're that person that somebody just plucks them and says, all right, you're going to do this. Or if they want to specifically, say, I would love to be an MC and have that be a part of my career.
Yes, absolutely. And, I just encourage those people that either want to consider doing it or are in that kind of somebody's told you you're going to do it, whether you want to or not, not to take it lightly, to really value that role, study it, look at others who have done it, watch videos, really kind of plot out how to be able to do that. And then, some of it is just, there is an element of intuitiveness about it too, that you're able to adjust on the fly, because, unexpected things always happen in presentations, especially when you have multiple speakers and kind of a long day, long conference.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, Michele, let's close things out with our rapid fire Q&A. Are you ready?
Okay, let's see if I can do it.
First thing that comes to your mind, and we'll burn through these questions. So,
okay.
When you give a presentation, are you a slides or no slides kind of gal?
No slides.
How come?
I am more of a storyteller, so I want to paint the picture rather than use slides. So if I could choose, I would do no slides every time.
Got it. Now, who's a speaker that inspires you the most and why?
Now, this is such a tough question. Well, I'm surrounded by speakers, and I've been mentored by so many, like Ken Davis and Michael Hyatt and a friend, Jill Savage. So I've been mentored by multiple speakers. Those three would be three that I really admire, as well as some in history. Like, I love studying people like Winston Churchill, who knew exactly what to say at a really key moment and really changed history. To me, that's fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many great people from history, and be able to go back and see those recordings or even listen to their audio it's the kind of thing that really, one that comes to my mind is Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, yes,
it just gives you chills listening to that. It's the passion and the artistic delivery. It's completely amazing.
Yeah, I've printed out one of his most famous speeches, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s, and read through them and studied it. It's really an art. It's really quite profound.
Abraham Lincoln's another one that, we don't have any recordings of that, but, just to read his words and to see just the masterful aspects of his communication, you can only imagine what it sounded like.
Exactly. If only.
So I know you find yourself on stage quite often. What's kind of the craziest, funniest, silliest, most bizarre thing that might have happened to you?
I can't think of a specific. I have to say my audience is usually the funniest. So I use a lot of humor in my presentations, especially when I'm talking about just ordinary life. I tend to be pretty vulnerable, authentic, and transparent. So I have 6 kids, so I have humorous material all the time generated for me. So when I share my funny stories, what I love is the people in the audience that call out and scream out their own things. And that cracks me up every time. Once I kind of give permission to not be perfect and not have it all together, and then people just throw their stuff out in the middle of a presentation, and it's always new. It's always different.
All right. So as far as speaking and the skills that you've been able to develop over the last several years, What kind of impact has it had on your business and your career and kind of the direction that you're headed?
Well, I mean, it's made my business. I mean, this is what I do all the time. I mean, I have appointments every day, coaching appointments, speaking appointments, presentation preparation. I mean, it's really made my business. So to go from not wanting to be a speaker or not doing anything, 7-8 years ago, to literally I'm working more than full time in this business right now. I mean, that's amazing. I'm incredibly thankful for the mentors I've had in my life that have helped me to get to this place. It's a true gift.
It's fantastic. I mean, your story is so cool because I know I've had other people on the show that they're like, when I was a teenager, I realized I wanted to be a professional speaker, and everything that I did, from then until now has led up to me being able to do that. But then to hear, someone like yourself who that's not something you had a passion for, that's not necessarily something that you said, I want to do, but you found yourself in a situation where it made sense, and that you then took the steps that you needed to do to kind of continue to improve and become much sharper. And that, I think, for so many people is a great inspiration. Hopefully
it helps people know that even if you're 40 years old and thinking of this, it's not too late. I mean, it's really not. If you kind of get an itch for this and have a passion for it, then dive in and make it a commitment, a goal to practice it, learn the craft, practice it as often as you can, and improve.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, so prior to you going to SCORE conference and learning all the things that you've learned, now if you could go back and either share some advice with either yourself or somebody who's in that same place, what advice would you give?
Well, probably the biggest mistake that I made early on is that I felt like I needed to create new content for every event that I did. That is not a sustainable model. So every time I had a speaking engagement, and sometimes I would have multiple, every week, I was creating new material for each presentation, and that's just not even sustainable at all. It's foolish. So what I wish I would have known at the beginning is to kind of take some time, whether it's a couple long weekends or maybe a week vacation or whatever, to really sit back and go, okay, what is my passion? What is my expertise? What am I good at? What do I want to talk about? So in other words, what is my message? And really hone in on 3, 4, 5, 6 messages that fit my gifts, fit my talents, my expertise, and have a market need, and then develop a handful of presentations that really fit the market need with my expertise, and then pull from those when I go and present. Because what I've discovered over the last several years is that when I speak or use the same presentations multiple times, they just get better and better and better and better. And when I'm always crafting new content, I never have a chance to perfect it.
That's such great advice. I know for those speakers who maybe they've written a book or a couple of books, that typically tends to be what they talk about, that topic. But for individuals who maybe have different areas of knowledge related to some of the things, obviously there's connecting and correlating things, just as you've described earlier for us, the various topics that you speak on. But I think that that's so good to realize, like, look, you should not be crafting a different message for every presentation that you're giving. Like, what's the big themes? Maybe there's obviously things that change or nuances and aspects that change based on who the audience is or what the venue is. But having those core themes, I guess, is really something that is important to take note of and realize that you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What I tend to do is I revamp them. So every year I kind of reevaluate and say, okay, which of my presentations am I going to stick with? And I usually come up with 1 or 2 more, because as life changes and you change, you develop new areas of expertise and new topics that you're passionate about. And so you can still develop fresh content, but maybe a couple a year rather than, 20 a year.
Yep. Very good. Well, Michele, I thank you so much for your time today. You truly are somebody that kicks ass when they speak, present, or pitch. So thank you for sharing your insights. And we'll have all of the links to your website. We'll also, of course, include links to SCORE, because I know that's a critical piece of what you do. And any other resources we'll have in the show notes over at whatthespeak.com. So again, thank you. And maybe we'll have you back on the show again to share some additional information.
I'd love it. Thanks, Brian.
Are you working out right now or listening to this episode while driving? If so, I know you're not able to leave a rating and review in iTunes at the moment. However, next time you're in front of your computer or smartphone, could you be sure to do so? Just go to whatthespeak.com/audio or whatthespeak.com/video. Thanks so much for your support.
All right, here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What to Speak. Be sure to visit whatthespeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.